Using Twitter, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Venezuela, Jorge Arreaza, rejected the declarations made by the United States Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, on the supposed pulling of public funds to the Venezuelan government. He wrote, Pompeo's reaction regarding the military cooperation between Russia and Venezuela is not only disrespectful, it's also cynical. The U.S. has at least 800 military bases in 70 countries. Today, 75 of the 107 United States security cooperation programs operate in Latin America. He also pointed out it is unusual that the U.S. government questions our sovereign right to cooperate in defense and security with other countries, when it has publicly threatened Venezuela with a military intervention. If they want to cooperate, they should lift the sanctions against Venezuela. Finally, he added, if they are so concerned about wasting money, they should review their immense and unjustified military budget of more than $674 million for 2019. For sure, the more than 50 million people without access to public health in the United States can suggest fairer destinations for those funds. Our correspondent Hansel Oro in Moscow explains the Kremlin's reaction to these comments.
Kremlin Press Secretary Dmitry Peskov has said that the recent tweets by United States Secretary of State Mike Pompeo were very inappropriate and of poor diplomatic choice. On Twitter, Pompeo strongly criticized stationing Russian bombers at the Venezuelan Simon Bolivar International Airport. The aircraft, including 2 nuclear-capable bombers, flew across the Atlantic Ocean and the Caribbean to land in Venezuela. In response, Peskov said that the United States could very well feed the entire African continent with all the money it spends on weaponry. In fact, the U.S. defense budget for 2019 is expected to be $716 billion, $16 billion more than when compared with this year's budget. According to the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, the United States is one of the biggest arms sellers in the world, with 57% of all arms sales coming from the country. The United States has also expressed its disapproval of the latest investment deal between Venezuela and Russia. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro visited Moscow last week and agreed to support a more multilateral world with his counterpart, President Vladimir Putin.
In Chile, the Interior Minister Andrés Chadwick is in Parliament being questioned about the death of Mapuche Camilo Catrillanca. Indigenous lawmakers Emilia Nullado is expected to question Chadwick on the details surrounding Catrillanca's murder, the young Mapuche man who was killed on November 14th by security forces, sparking outrage and several protests. On Monday, a court revoked the preventive detention of 2 police officers accused of taking part in the killing. Our correspondent in Santiago, Paola Dragnik, brings us details.
The Interior Minister Andrés Chadwick is appearing in Congress to be questioned regarding the behavior of the police forces, also known as Carabineros, and particularly that of the Jungle Command in the community of Temucucuy, where Mapuche member Camilo Catrillanca was killed. He is the 16th Mapuche murder in Chile since the return to democracy. This Tuesday, the Interior Minister will be questioned by the Mapuche lawmaker Emilia Nullado, that has planned to start the round of questions with an introduction in the Mapuche language, something that has spread great expectations not only among lawmakers, but also among human rights organizations that have arrived to the Parliament to listen to her questions.
Also, Sonnen Helsner has been chosen as Ecuador's new vice president. The National Assembly chose him with 94 votes in favor out of 128 assembly members. There were 27 against and 7 abstentions. Sonnen Helsner is a well-known radio presenter from Guayaquil. He has no formal links to any political party. However, several figures from Ecuador's traditional right-wing parties have expressed support for him. Now we go to Quito, where our correspondent Denise Herrera has the details.
Hello, good morning. we are at the National Assembly where the plenary session just finished, and now Otto Sonne-Halsner was elected by the National Assembly as the new Vice President of Ecuador with 90 votes in favor. Otto Sonne-Halsner was elected as the new Vice President of Ecuador. Also, the Citizen Abolition Movement rejected the list, and also they voted against the new Vice President of Ecuador. Now, Elizabeth Cabezas appointed him as the new Vice President, despite Moreno is not now in the country. It's all for now. Back to you at the studios.
And in France, students continue to protest across the country, the day after President Emmanuel Macron's announced concessions to the Yellow Vest movement. Hundreds of high school students have marched in Paris against education reforms. These reforms include changes to the university admissions system. The students are angry that their concerns are not being addressed. Also protested in the south of the country. In the city of Montpellier, young people staged a performance to denounce the detention of dozens of fellow students. Hundreds of students have also rallied in Marseille. A young French protester said he plans to file a lawsuit after his hand was blown off. He was apparently injured whilst picking up a grenade at the Yellow Vest protest last Saturday. Also in France, at least 2 people were killed and another 11 seriously wounded when a gunman burst into a Christmas market in Strasbourg. France Interior Minister Christophe Castaner said that the suspect was known to police for criminal activities. Police have locked down the area as the shooter is still on the run. The shooting coincides with a meeting of European Union leaders in the French city. First break here from the South. We'll be back in a minute, but make sure to follow us on Twitter at Telesur English and my personal account, Laura P. Telesur. We'll be back. And we are back. A court in Argentina has handed down prison sentences to 2 former Ford executives for their part in the dirty war conduced by the military dictatorship. Our correspondent in Buenos Aires, Sabrina Ross, has more.
This is indeed an historic day in Argentina. A court has condemned former managers of the Ford multinational company for crimes against humanity. This is the first verdict of its kind, not only for collaboration with the dictatorship, but for direct involvement by the businessmen in these crimes. The case dealt with events 42 years ago, when 24 workers were kidnapped and tortured. Most of them were shop stewards at the Ford factory at General Pacheco. All this was proven during the hearings in the case, which began in December 2017. The Ford manager not only handed over the names of the workers, but their files with photos and other personal details. They let the security forces into the factory and supplied transportation to take the arrested workers away. The court decided unanimously that the sentences should be served in common prisons. Pedro Mueller, the former head of production at Ford, was sentenced to 10 years in prison, while Hector Sibilia, the former head of security at the factory, received 12 years, while the army officer Santiago Riberos got 15 years.
Pro-immigration groups have protested at the border between Mexico and the United States. The activists gathered on a California beach near the fence separating both countries to protest the migration policies pushed by President Trump. Our correspondent in Mexico, Pablo Perez, brings us the latest from the border.
We're at a place called Otay Mesa. This is near Tijuana on the Mexican state of Baja California, bordering the southern state of California of the United States. And to this point is where the some representatives of the migrant caravan are headed. In a few minutes they will arrive, because there behind me there's the United States General Consulate, and the migrants, the Central Americans, are going to deliver a letter to the North American consul here, and they are attempting to ease their process for the ones that are asking for refugee or political asylum in the United States. That's something that has been very difficult lately because of the policies of the Donald Trump government that has lowered the number of applicants up to 30 a day, when they usually were processing 100 or even more daily. Now they're only processing 30, and that's insufficient, because there's not only the migrants, the Central American migrants, but there's also a lot of people applying for refugee status here in Tijuana, people coming from all over the world. There are Russians, there are Africans, people from India that are trying to get into the United States through this entry port. So the migrants some of them are trying to do this in the legal way, but there's another way, that is crossing to the United States and getting detained by the Border Patrol, and then asking them, after turning themselves over, asking them to the authorities for the initiation of their refugee application. The CBP, the California Border Patrol, has said that over the last weeks they have detained over 2,000 Central Americans. That's a rise on the number of the people that is crossing illegally through the desert, walking through the desert, or aided by what they call coyotes. That's the people that charge for crossing the border illegally. And that surge on illegal crossing has been registered not only here in the border between Baja California and California, but all over the border between Mexico and the United States. That's indicating, according to certain analysts, that the migration itself is growing, and not only because it's not only shown on the migrant caravan, but on a surge through all over the border.
Also in Mexico, President Andrés Manuel López Obrador has announced that a new investment agreement will be signed with the United States, Canada, and Central American countries to tackle migration. He is also set to introduce a new oil production plan to address the issue of declining production. In 2013, the previous administration opened the Mexican energy sector to private investors. But Andrés Manuel López Obrador has called the scheme farce, as private companies haven't invested as much as they had promised.
It would mean investment. It would mean jobs. It would mean economic benefits. I am willing to travel, and there are about 10 daily flights to Washington and New York. It's no problem.
Now to Bolivia, where President Evo Morales is holding a high-level multinational meetings to combat drug trafficking in the country. It was attended by several countries, the National Council, and the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. Morales highlighted the achievements of the coca cultivation program.
All countries have a duty to collectively fight drug trafficking that hurts humanity. We have a responsibility to be part of the struggle.
Now we go to the Caribbean, where intellectual and social leaders from more than 50 countries will participate in the 4th International Conference for World Balance in Cuba's capital, Havana, next year. They will be discussing the importance of the intercultural dialogue, diversity in arts, the roles and challenges of social movements, and the struggle for peace. The conference is reported to be the largest global forum of plural though where ways of promoting peace will be discussed. It will take place on the 28th of January until the 31st.
I think it's one of those events where you will discover many things, because many people come to contribute to the kind of things that we need today. Those socialized with peace, tolerance and humanism dialogue and anti-fascist principles.
It is a meeting in favor of peace, intercultural dialogue, and the people and the independence right. We have to try to bring the multi-thought to international scales.
Meanwhile, the Caribbean has significantly boosted its ability to limit the ravages of climate change, thanks to a $2 million light detection and ranging LiDAR system delivered by the U.S. government. The airborne technology will improve the region's capability to monitor and plan for physical changes in land and maritime environments. The data will be used to provide detailed information of the region's coastal areas, reefs, and seafloor, as well as to produce flood maps. The International Monetary Fund is predicting economic growth for the Bahamas. As the country's economy continues to recover, GDP is projected to grow by over 2% in 2019. The Humbert-Minnis government has also narrowed the fiscal deficit, and Bahamas is now preparing to pilot a digital currency. The International Monetary Fund recognizes the role of such new financial technologies in mitigating potential risks to the economy. Time for a second break here, but stay with us. Welcome back. Meanwhile, the United States President Donald Trump says he's more than willing to take the blame for a partial government shutdown if he can't reach a deal with Democrats to fund his border wall. He says his long-promised U.S.-Mexico barrier will be built one way or the other. Trump was speaking at a White House meeting where he clashed with the Democratic leaders Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer.
You know what I'll say? Yes, if we don't get what we want, one way or the other, whether it's through you, through a military, through anything you want to call, I will shut down the government.
Okay,
absolutely.
fair enough.
And I am proud, and I'll tell you what,
disagree.
I am proud to shut down the government for border security, Chuck, because the people of this country don't want criminals and people that have lots of problems and drugs pouring into our country. So I will take the mantle. I will be the one to shut it down. I'm not going to blame you for it.
And in the U.S. side of the border, dozens of leaders from different faiths were arrested over the weekend as they gathered there to show their support for migrants. The group said they brought together some 200 faith and indigenous leaders who represented diverse faiths, including Christian, Jewish, and Muslims. On a Gender Day at the COP24, the Global Climate Change Conference, on the mark of the occasion, Panos Caribbean has highlighted the need for gender-sensitive responses to the impacts of catastrophic weather events. While the effects of climate change are widely felt, women commonly face higher risk and greater burdens, particularly in situations of poverty. A video produced by Panos Caribbean highlights these human and social justice dimensions, as seen through the lenses of leading Caribbean professionals and activists.
If that woman is a single income earner, then when there is a period of extreme weather, then the small resources that she does have, she has to work magic to continue to take care of the families.
If there is a flood or a hurricane and food is reduced or lost, by and large, women are responsible for feeding the children. So she has a differential role to play.
Because climate change affects food, it affects agriculture, it puts them at a disadvantage in being able to supply food to their family.
If she lives in rural Jamaica and happens also to be a farmer, she then has the additional challenge of taking care of the farm in addition to the household.
And a fashion contest has been held in the capital of the Central African Republic. Miss Central Africa Beauty Contest disappeared from the countries due to poverty and violence following the coup d'etat in 2013. During the contest, young women were surrounded by hundreds of people who saw them parade and wear African clothes. The country is one of the poorest in the world. UNICEF says 2 out of 3 children need humanitarian help. 3 suspects have gone on trial for the murder and kidnap of 2 British citizens in South Africa. The suspects are accused of being involved in the killing of 2 elderly British, though they have to have been searching for rare plants. The couple went missing in February and were later found dead. The trio are charged with murder, kidnapping, robbery, and contrabanding, domestic counter-terrorism laws. The Yemeni Houthi movement and the Saudi-backed government will exchange around 15,000 prisoners as part of the UN-sponsored peace talks in Sweden. Delegates from both sides agreed that the exchange will take place through Sana'a and Sayum Airport in Yemen. The process will be monitored by the United Nations and the International Committee of Red Cross. Peace talks will continue until the 13th of December, with a ceasefire in the key port of Hodeidah being on top of agenda.
Between us and the other party, including Hadi Hamed Hayat, this is considered the second step in the agreement that was signed on December 2, and if God wishes, in 2 weeks there will be more information about the prisoners' exchange. Within 45 days or less, there will be a full exchange.
In Tunisia, the National Coalition has launched a new political front. The party has gathered the basis of Nida Tone's movement while bringing together new progressive forces. Let's find out more.
The National Coalition was born of the Nida Tone's political party, a bloc led by Prime Minister Youssouf al-Shahed. This political party has conducted several surveys, this in a bid to launch a new political party open to new progressive forces.
The Prime Minister and members of the government are at the forefront of this project. Congress representatives are also supporting our project.
The National Coalition was once the main ally of the Al-Nashara movement, but now it seems destined to become its main adversary. The coalition is looking towards a new era of politics, but that could be brought to a halt by the Al-Nashra movement.
The coalition's battle with the Al-Nahda movement will be decisive, although this battle will be just a partial one, since the real battle involves the chief of state.
The National Coalition announced the objectives just before launching its project, which seeks to offer a fresh political option.
We've come to the end of this news brief, but you can find this and many other stories on our website, telesurenglish.net, where of course you can find more opinion articles and special interviews. Stay with Telesur, connecting the Global South. Until next time.